Sewing with the Rex RX-607Z. So this has been called a Sailrite knockoff, which it is in a way, but that's not 100% of the story. Reading the history on the Sailrite website, it appears that the factory that used to produce the original machine started selling unbranded machines, and I believe this is one of them. And while Sailrite has moved on to a different factory, that factory that built the original ones is still producing these, and they sell it under various names, not just Rex. Is it as good as Sailrite? I don't know. I've never used a Sailrite, but I would guess not. It's probably a bit less refined. In terms of cost, it's about a third of the cost. Currently, a Sailrite is just under 1,200, and this one was under 400. It was about 360, I believe, a year ago. And I have made some upgrades. I bought the Monster Wheel from Sailrite. This is the original wheel. You can see the diameter is much larger, so it allows it to sew more slowly, so you have more control. But then you're also able to slip the belt off and sew by hand, thereby not needing power, electricity, and it's also much quieter. Also, I've made a little wooden base. This actually used to be much larger. But I had to make it smaller so that I could get it to fit on the shelf on my boat. And the first thing I did with this was to stitch new windows in my Dodger. They're 40 gauge vinyl, so it's probably one of the hardest sewing projects you can take on for a boat. And a lot of trial and error. I made a lot of mistakes. I've gone through different size threads, different size needles, come up with a lot of different tricks. When you're using basting tape, you need to clean the needle. It's a two-sided tape that gums up the needle. So you use alcohol and a little bit of soap. It's very necessary to hold the top thread in most cases. Otherwise, it gets tangled. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with it now. Like I said, it's taken me a bit of time to learn this. There's different sides. This does not have like a spring mechanism, which I believe the Sailrite does, but that's fine. This is reverse and this is forward, and that's your stitch length. This is your zigzag needle position. And my first canvas project for today will be weather cloths. So weather cloths are essentially a piece of fabric that is hung from the lifelines on each side of the cockpit. They have a variety of functions, primarily to keep you dry from the spray and splashing when you're sailing, but also at anchor. They block the wind, they provide a bit of privacy, and they also block some of the sunlight that's reflected off of the water. So a number of different functions. It's interesting to note that while we call them weather cloths, in the UK they call them Dodgers, while we call that a Dodger. And in the UK, they call that a spray hood. So I'm going to kind of make this up as I go along. I have some green Sunbrella that I'm going to be using. These need to be, they need to be able to break away if a wave hits them. Otherwise, you could damage the stanchions. So I will make that up as I go along. And now with the basic shape made up, I need to decide how exactly I'm going to attach it. And I was planning to do grommets here and then just tying it across the top lifeline. But I think a more elegant solution will be to drape over some sort of piece and clip that on. And now I've got that piece sewn on and draped over, being held by these binder clips. So now I get a better view of how this is going to work. I did have to make sure that I clear this block for the furler. And in order to make this breakaway, if I get hit by a wave or something, so it doesn't bend the stanchions, the plan is to use stainless steel grommets in each of the four corners, and then I'll work something out at the bottom. And also at the top, I'm going to use these little twist lock fasteners. And just a word on these stainless grommets that I'm using here in the corners. While I like to use brass on the interior of my boat because it matches, my personal preference is to use stainless on the exterior. So I'm using these 304 stainless grommets, and they come like this. They're solid. And I use a pair of wire cutters to cut about 8 little slots in them. And once I cut and burn a hole into the fabric with a soldering iron, I hammer them down, and this is the result. All those little slots will spread out, and it's very, very much secure. So same thing with the fasteners, these twist lock fasteners. I burn 2 holes in there and then kind of pound in the buttons or install the buttons, and then cut a hole for this, and it works good. And now for the final fitting. So I've actually made one for each side, and the attachment, so there are 4 of those twist locks on top holding it to the top lifeline. Each of the 4 corners have grommets. The top ones are same as the bottom. I have a cord lock. One end is knotted, and the other one is not, so you can take it out. And that's really the idea of the breakaway. So if a wave hits this, it'll take some force, but it'll actually break away like that. And I won't lose my cord lock or line because it's looped onto the grommet, and the cord lock is held in place by the knot. Christ, this thing's heavy.